A nearly 24-hour standoff in College Station. We have been on scene all day and have the latest on the situation. And ERCOT's plan to avoid another disaster like one in February may have left you scratching your head. KRHD investigates the language in the plan and makes it easier for you to understand. Your KRHD News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley. This is KRHD News.
Good evening and thank you for watching KRHD News at 5. I'm Hallie Jones. The Brazos County Sheriff's Office has been working an active standoff situation after deputies went to serve civil papers to the 2500 block of Cypress Road and College Station Wednesday evening. KRHD reporter Rebecca Fiedler has been at the scene all day, where she joins us now.
The standoff has been ongoing for an entire day now, involving the resident of a home on the 2500 block of Cypress Drive and College Station. The standoff began when sheriff's deputies attempted to serve the resident with civil papers Wednesday afternoon, and the individual in question refused to open the door.
We have made contact with them. We are keeping an open line of communication. That's the best thing we've got going for us right now. Just trying to talk to them and come to a peaceful resolution.
The sheriff's office would not comment on whether any additional people are inside the home. They did confirm that the public at large need not worry for their safety. Although Cypress Drive is blocked off to through traffic, residents of the street are allowed to come and go from their houses.
They should be allowed to go into their homes if they need to go, go to work, pick up their kids from school, or go to the corner store, stuff like that. It's absolutely good to do that. We're just asking people to kind of avoid the area. That way we can stay in good communication with whoever's inside.
SWAT officers and negotiators with the Brazos County Sheriff's Office have formed a perimeter around the street, backed up by College Station Police, Bryan Police, both city fire departments and EMS, as well as Texas A&M University Police's canine officers.
Anytime we have more resources available to make it safer for everyone involved, the community, for the person, for us, we're going to use those resources.
One resident of the neighborhood spoke to KRHD News earlier this morning, sharing their feelings of surprise and curiosity.
This is the first time anything has happened like that over here. This is a pretty good neighborhood and everybody's really nice and sweet.
As officers continue talks towards a peaceful conclusion, they ask that the community at large avoid the area and give them space to work. We'll be bringing you any updates on this situation as it unfolds. Reporting in College Station, Rebecca Fiedler, KRHD News.
New at 5, Texas A&M University says it will require students, faculty, and staff to participate in a COVID-19 testing program. While vaccines and masking will not be required, students with proof of vaccination will be entered into a drawing for a year of undergrad tuition and fees. According to the university, students who do not comply with the reporting and testing may face, quote, possible separation from the university. Also new at 5, Governor Abbott says he will convene a second special legislative session at noon this Saturday. The first session is set to expire tomorrow. More than 50 Democratic lawmakers remain in Washington, D.C. in order to break quorum in the first session. No word yet on when they plan to return to the state capitol. Included in the second special legislative session are 17 agenda items. The governor says bail reform and election integrity will be included. Also included hot-button topics such as critical race theory and abortion-inducing drugs. Transgender youth sports and the 13th check for retired teachers will also be brought to the session. And finally, the special session will discuss, quote, legislation relating to legislative quorum requirements. ERCOT's recently announced plan to stabilize the electric grid left a lot of people scratching their heads. That's because the utility business uses a lot of big words to explain fairly simple concepts. But tonight, KRHD News investigator Dennis Turner breaks it all down in terms most of us can understand.
Hi, this is Sherry Wallace. We're outside of...
We met Sherry Wallace remotely.
Space heater.
She was kind enough to have her husband shoot phone video for us to show how folks in rural areas got hammered by the Texas deep freeze.
Finally came back on and has been on.
That's almost 5 days?
Yes.
We checked back in person several weeks later to find we'd only scratched the surface. That and much that happened in the deep freeze still needed explaining.
Channel 25, get the local news because they're the only place that was giving us any kind of information.
The Texas deep freeze put a lot of people and animals like this in danger. But now ERCOT says it's made changes to prevent that from happening again. Will they work? That's the question a lot of people had after listening to this.
Out of the gates, we fixed several problems that have plagued us in the past related to extraordinary costs during emergencies and uncertainty around pricing rules during emergencies.
What does that mean? And what else does the Texas Public Utility Commission and ERCOT have in their fixer-upper plan for the electric grid? Does it give you confidence or you still have questions?
I still have questions because they haven't been given a lot of information. They're just kind of thrown out outlines of it.
Much of the renovation plans lawmakers came up with had a familiar ring to it.
I filed a bill that would have required the Public Utility Commission to ensure that there was an adequate reserve to prevent blackouts. The leadership in Austin did not give it a hearing.
In fact, some of the ideas, we're told, go all the way back to the freeze of 1989, Turner's first year as a state representative. And our favorite economist, Ray Perryman, predicted two very important and needed changes that ended up in ERCOT's fixer-upper plan. First, he said, Texas needed to start paying for a certain amount of reserve power, just enough to keep the grid up and running. Exactly what lawmakers ordered and what ERCOT has done.
We are operating in a more reliable manner than we have ever done before. We are bringing more generation across peak to be able to meet the needs of all Texans and to keep our grid reliable.
And since you don't get something for nothing, we could see this on our electric bills. Second, our economist hinted whatever bailout customers might get would come in the form of easier debt financing.
We can do things where any legitimate cost for the utilities are recouped over time.
Exactly what House Bill 1520 does. Customers don't get a bailout, but a pay-as-you-go plan. Another bill orders weather protection at power and gas plants and energy transmission facilities, with both ERCOT and the Railroad Commission taking charge of inspections. Violators face fines of up to $1 million. ERCOT board members must now live in Texas. The state now has a power outage alert system aimed at informing customers and coordinating between government and the utilities in an emergency. These are just the highlights and just the Reader's Digest version. We'll go into more detail next week.
Say, I'm dealing.
Meantime, Sherry Wallace can enjoy more time with her horses without worrying much about whether she'll have the power to turn on the lights when she goes back into her home.
I hope that if it would be that bad that they would have made enough changes that they'd be able to get through it a little better.
Because she says without meaningful changes that help, Texas politicians might have a hard time getting elected dog catcher next time around. In Little River Academy, Dennis Turner, 25 News.
The College Station and Bryan registrars are working together to assist residents that need birth certificates. Ordered to legally obtain a birth certificate in Texas, all applicants must provide appropriate documentation. Some examples of documentation include foreign passports, a Mexican voter ID card, a phone or utility bill, and a prenatal chip card.
There are some forms of foreign identification that we are allowed to accept. We can take any foreign passport as long as it's accompanied by a U.S. visa, and both the passport and the visa must be valid.
Residents with any questions or concerns are encouraged to contact their respective registrar's office for acceptable forms of documentation and any additional information they may need.
We've seen over particularly the last 6 months is the white collarization of blue collar. So what that means is a lot of benefits that have typically been associated with white collar workers are now starting to be offered to blue collar and hourly workers.
Now, those benefits include debt-free education, tuition reimbursement programs, mental health support, maternity and paternity leave, even retirement plans, and 401k matches. Matthew Stevenson with Snag a Job, a site for hourly workers, says less than 10% of companies are offering retirement benefits and 401k matching for hourly workers. Now, he says the number of companies offering this benefit has been growing in the last year. Big names like Starbucks, Shake Shack, Panda Express, Target, and Walmart. Now, he believes the pandemic has made workers more willing to ask for these benefits, even expect them.
Even though these may be a way to, attract the best workers in the current environment, the reality is the actual ROI is there that they're going to keep doing this even after the pandemic. And I think that's an incredibly positive development in blue collar and in hourly work more broadly.
Now, he says Chipotle is seeing this return on investment. It was one of the first to implement tuition reimbursement programs and 401k matching, and they're now retaining more workers and seeing more workers go into management positions. $15 an hour is also becoming the norm in the service industry. Stevenson says more companies will have to offer higher pay to stay competitive. Now, ahead in our lineup, the exact replica of the Mississippi River is helping to prepare for future flooding. How researchers are harnessing the river's power to address rising sea levels. Things are changing as the Delta variant spreads throughout the country. Mask wearing rules are becoming common again, but so many people may not want to wear one. Some may feel unsafe, though, being around people who aren't wearing masks, and it can be difficult to convince people to put the mask back on. Now, Lauren Nordgren has researched how psychology affects our actions, and he says using evidence and facts in your argument won't actually work many times when you're trying to persuade someone to do something.
People don't want to feel like they're being pushed. And so however you communicate information, just know if your approach is to push people with facts, with evidence, with shame, the harder you push, the harder they will push back.
Instead, he says we're better off affirming their control and freedom. Now, in the case of masks, you can say that you understand their personal choice, but you would appreciate it if they wore a mask during the time that you're together.
What you're doing in those opening statements is you are reaffirming people's freedom. And the more you reaffirm their freedom, the less defensive they're going to be in their reaction.
Now, when it comes to vaccines, he says not all unvaccinated people are necessarily against the vaccine, but some may look and say it's just too much of an inconvenience to go get the vaccine. Now, he hopes that accessibility in some areas will improve to help with that, and it could be done by bringing vaccine clinics to certain places, creating reminders, or even giving people time off to get vaccinated. Small businesses are learning about an unintentional consequence of the first COVID relief legislation. The bill changed how over-the-counter drugs are regulated. It added a new fee of $20,000 a year for the companies making these products. The fee was about $1,000 before, and it is a big blow to small companies, places like Pacific Beach Organics, which makes organic, more environmentally friendly skincare products.
We're looking at the CARES Act as something that was intended to help people. We can't believe that this is the very thing that has caused us to consider closing up shop.
And that $20,000 fee, that's the same regardless of how large a company is. New legislation would be required to reduce the fee for smaller businesses. The FAA is now calling on airports to crack down on alcohol sales. In a letter, the agency says many recent incidents of unruly passengers involved intoxication. Many airport restaurants have been selling to-go drinks because of the pandemic. The FAA says people can't bring their own alcohol on board, but many people are getting onto planes with those to-go containers. The agency wants airports to take the lead in stopping this.
First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines is standing by.
And we have seen clouds roll in from thunderstorms that were around San Antonio earlier, and those clouds have pushed all the way across the Brazos Valley. So it's really not bad out there for tonight. And look at this, 84 degrees with those clouds around, feeling like 88. Winds around the southeast at 7 miles per hour. So definitely a reprieve from the heat across the area for today, and clouds and radar showing that we do have a couple of those sprinkles making their way into our area, but a lot of that is dying out. But the cloud cover is rather thick around here, and that's why we are seeing our temperatures stay on the cooler side across the region. As you can see, there are some showers and thunderstorms down the Gulf of Mexico. Those are moving the opposite direction. And then as you head up toward Oklahoma, there's another weak system here. I don't think these will be making it into our area, however, as we will see those showers and thunderstorms push on off toward the east and not the south. So here we go with our future track here at home. By morning, mostly cloudy skies around. We will see those low clouds move on into the area. During the afternoon, an isolated thunderstorm possible. You can see a couple little green dots there. This is by 5 o'clock on Friday. Don't think it's going to amount to too much. Shouldn't affect your Friday evening plans. And your Saturday, we'll start off with some clouds in the morning, and by the afternoon, we're looking at maybe an isolated storm or two along with that. And looking at temperatures tonight, should be making it down to about 70 degrees as you head up toward Franklin, 74 Bryan College Station, maybe some upper 60s as close as Centerville. And then tomorrow, high temperatures still below normal, a little warmer than today with a little less cloud cover, into the low to mid 90s, about 92, 93 degrees out there, but still not looking too bad across these parts. And looking at at your 10-day forecast. 93 up to 95 on Saturday and partly cloudy skies there. Probably a little warmer by Sunday. 97 degrees for a high, and we will keep it primarily in the mid to upper 90s next week. Now, the humidity is going to make it feel like it's over 100 every single day, but at least we're not talking about a string of 100s every single day. That's good news. And lows at night will be into the 70s.
13 million people in the United States are at risk of having their livelihoods altered by rising sea levels and climate change. Chris Conti shows us an innovative project that is working to address this while harnessing the power of the Mississippi River.
Beneath the surface, the earth churns. Nothing can slow the mighty Mississippi. The water between these banks pulls 500 million tons of mud from 30 states. Sediment travels 2,300 miles south and is deposited into the Gulf of Mexico with each passing year.
You are literally surrounded by, above, sometimes inundated by, unfortunately, water here. Yep.
As an engineer and resident of New Orleans, Brian Lazina has nothing but respect for this river, which helped create the state of Louisiana.
We weren't going to be able to do nothing, obviously. Change was coming.
But the Mississippi River Delta is disappearing. Rising sea levels have been slowly eating away at the earth here.
It's all about keeping a map looking like South Louisiana in some form or fashion.
It turns out, though, you don't actually have to be on the Mississippi River to study how to fix it.
What we're looking at right here is represents about a 2.5 mile reach of the Mississippi River.
Some 1,200 miles to the north, tucked inside a warehouse in Massachusetts.
Ships haul barges up and downstream.
Andy Johansson and his team have managed to fit North America's second longest river into a warehouse the size of a football field.
In order to simulate the flow patterns correctly, you need to have the geometry scaled and matching as closely as possible.
Over the last few years, Andy and his team at Alden Labs have been using this lab to study a sediment diversion channel with the help of a dye bottle and food coloring.
Are you making an improvement? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better?
The team can control the velocity of the water and see how much sediment is naturally carried into the channel.
One of the benefits of the physical models is you're actually able to inject dye. You're actually able to observe, what's happening with the flow patterns.
Think of it like a dam, only instead of diverting water, they're diverting sediment or small grains of sand and earth.
This does not exist right now.
The idea is to move that sediment through a channel some 7 miles south into the Mid-Barataria Bay, a section of the Mississippi Delta that was once all wetlands and is now just water because of rising sea levels, putting New Orleans and the entire state of Louisiana at risk.
So if we can do something and make a difference, have a positive influence on it, that's great.
The cost of the model was about $1.4 million. It's essentially giving engineers a dry run at constructing the $4 billion project here along the Mississippi. All of the money is coming from a settlement related to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill from back in 2015. In the first 50 years after it's built, the sediment diversion project could create or save as much as 47 square miles of land. While this project will help protect the city of New Orleans, this is not just a coastal Louisiana issue. As sea levels rise worldwide, sediment diversion is the kind of climate change management project communities nationwide are having to look at simply to survive.
What we can do now is not only harness the power of the river to build new land, but also sustain the wetlands that still exist.
Those who live at the mouth of the Mississippi know nothing can stop this river's fury. So instead of fighting it, they are harnessing the power of this unforgiving, unrelenting force of nature.
And this is not a small project, it's a landscape level project. It is intended to change the environment. We take that responsibility strongly.
On the Mississippi River Delta, I'm Chris Conti.
Here are some of the stories we're working on for Krhd News at 6. We'll continue our coverage of the standoff scene in the residential area of College Station. Plus, the Brazos Valley needs help in the form of foster parents. Just how prominent the issue is and how you can help. These stories and more coming up at the top of the hour. World News Tonight is just ahead, and we're back in 30 minutes for Krhd News at 6. Until then,